There are few things more satisfying than sharing wine from your own vines with friends and family. It expresses the essence of your land, the work, care and love you've put into your vines. And 50 vines can easily produce 200 litres of premium red, enough for a year's supply. Choosing the grape varieties and sourcing vines you wish to grow should be done a year in advance of planting so that you can order the right varieties on the right rootstocks for your soil, your climate and the wine style you're aiming for. A soil test should be done to determine whether particular nutrients need to be added to correct deficiencies, to correct the pH, or to condition the soil, making it more friable. Ideally, you'd lay out the vineyard rows and deep rip them in the season before planting takes place. Gypsum, compost and minerals may be added at this time or at planting. Planting in late winter or early spring is traditional, but vine rootlings can be held in cold rooms for summer planting if irrigation is available to nurture the vines through their first summer. Wine grapes are trained on trellises roughly 3 metres apart, usually running north-south on flat country to give the grapes roughly equal exposure to the sun, but they often follow land contours in sloping country. The first job in laying out the vineyard is to establish the end markers for the parallel rows, and in low rainfall areas pipes need to be laid to get water to the new vineyard, possibly run by an electronic system to control irrigation frequency and volume. In this case, a 25mm low-density polyethylene sub-main is being laid to service the vines. T-joiners are installed with 13mm offtakes for the dripper lines that run along the rows. It's very simple to install and relatively inexpensive. The vines on this property are 2 metres apart in the row, and there's a post or sturdy vine stake every 6 metres to carry the wire we'll train the vine onto. Bear in mind that an untrained vine would become a sprawling creeper if left to its own devices, almost impossible to pick and susceptible to many diseases. The trellis should be almost chest high for ease of picking and pruning. A wire run between the end posts of each row with dobs of paint indicating the vine spacing makes it easy to mark each planting site and each post hole. With marks for the post holes, a 2-stroke post hole digger is used to prepare holes for both the end assemblies and the intervening vine stakes. Much faster than digging holes by hand, but it's much easier to do it in spring than in summer. Holes may have to be softened up with water to get to the full depth. The traditional posts used in Australian viticulture are creosote or copper chrome arsenate impregnated pine, but both types are unsuitable for organic vineyards. Native pine posts are naturally resistant to termites and rot and can be grown in the same country as vines. However, they're hard to source. In the case of this new vineyard, galvanised steel posts were used for both the end assemblies and the vine stakes. These Waratah end assemblies come in kit form and are easy to erect. First the end post is put in place and firmed up, then the struts inserted into the bracket on the inside of the post and secured on the earth plate. A tensioning rod attaches the end posts to the strut, forming a rigid triangular shape which resists the significant force generated by the weight of the grape crop bearing down on the trellis wire. With someone sighting the stakes in, you can end up with a very neat looking vineyard. We run out the dripper line and insert drippers at each mark indicating a planting hole, then give all the vine planting sites an overnight irrigation, and finally we're ready to plant the vines. And the vines have arrived. Most came from a specialist vine nursery guaranteeing disease-free stock and are soaked in rainwater overnight to take up plenty of water to help them cope with emerging from 2 degrees centigrade in a cold room straight into the hot South Australian summer. Good nurseries give you a complete set of planting instructions. They are grafted vines of the variety Mataro, a heat-tolerant red grape used for making styles of wines similar to those made from Shiraz. They've been grafted onto a drought, salt and pest-tolerant rootstock called Paulson 1103, which will enjoy the heavy clay silt soil here to produce excellent quality fruit. Holes are prepared for the vines and fortified with a mixture of soil and aged compost. The roots must not be crumpled up or allowed to curl around in the hole. Soil is carefully filled around the roots. The vine can be buried such that it's sitting about 2 centimetres lower than it was in the nursery. Soil stomped down to remove air holes. The grapes being planted here have been grown in bags and are quite resilient. In planting the bare-rooted stock from the cold room, we'll need to nurse them through their first month or so. The wire to carry the irrigation line is run about 150 millimetres above ground level. The wires run through holes in the vine stakes and attached to the end assemblies. It's tensioned up with that fantastic little device, the gripple, using a tool called, you guessed it, a grippler. Special clips are available to attach the 13mm dripper tube to the wire. These are attached to the 25mm sub-main running underground next to the end assemblies. Water is delivered to the drippers via a solenoid valve controlled by a simple water computer. Short but frequent irrigations are normally required at first, 2 hours every couple of days, extending to 2 3-hour irrigations per week. If extreme heat occurs, more frequent irrigation may be required. The heavily galvanised 2.85mm diameter trellis wire is run out using a spinning jenny and tied onto the far end assembly. The high tensile wire is hard to work but remarkably strong and durable. At this end of the row, a short piece of trellis wire is attached to the end assembly and a gripple is used to tension and join the 2 wires. Now the trellis wire is hooked onto the vine stakes at the right height and tensioned up fully. The bare-rooted vines are pruned to a single stem, whilst the bag vines already need training up strings tied between the irrigation wire and the main trellis wire. This continues throughout summer, and the vines are encouraged to produce a single stem up to the wire and then send cordons in opposite directions along it. Buds that emerge up the stem are ruthlessly removed in an operation called disbudding. By the end of the summer, many of the vines are fully developed within their 2 metre allocated space on the trellis. It'll only be a year or 2 before they settle down to produce really high quality wine.